This video is brought to you by Vendor Finance. If you're looking for car finance and want the best available motor finance rates, check out vendorfinance.ie and apply online today. Vendor Finance is 100% Irish owned. See the comment section for more details.
Hello and welcome back to the Cars Ireland YouTube channel. Now, if we all cast our minds back to 2016, Peugeot at the time had a pretty dour lineup of cars. But then they made the great decision to turn the 3008 into a mid-size crossover. And that model just caught the imagination of people. It sold really well, it looked really good, and you could argue that it sparked a renaissance in the brand. Now they have way more interesting stuff like the 208, the 508, the 2008, all the 08s. Anyway, my argument is basically that Peugeot now have a very interesting lineup of cars. And it was all sparked by the 3008. And Peugeot have decided to give the 3008 a midlife facelift. Wouldn't we all like one of them? As you can probably see from the front there, it's all new looking. And we're going to have a look around this plug-in hybrid version. Now, because the 3008 is in hybrid form, the boot is slightly compromised. And that is pretty typical of all hybrids. And the reason being batteries. They're hidden underneath and they consume boot space. So 395 litres versus 520 for a more traditionally powered Peugeot 3008. You are also compromising in the fact that you will have leads in the boot for charging. So you have one under a false floor where you can hide it away in a little shelf. And there's also another lead in a very funky looking Peugeot bag. See? Bag of leads. It's still a pretty decent space and straightforward, nice flat floor, and you do have quick release levers here to drop the back seats down to get access to more space, even if those back seats don't quite fold fully flat. The back seats are very accommodating too. I am 6 foot tall, the front seat is set to my driving position and I have good leg room behind myself and really good headroom. Yeah, it's very comfortable, and actually you could sit 3 across here without huge complaints because we do have a 95% flat floor. Like, that's not bad. I've had worse. Middle you have your usual armrests with cup holders, and then it is a ski hatch, and the quality on this bit feels a bit cheap. But other than that, the quality is pretty good. Just that feels very flimsy and it might break. In front you have a 12-volt charger, you have your air conditioning controls, and you have 2 USB ports down the bottom. Very important. Yeah, like, no complaints. Now, while the outside has a more obvious change, well, in the face anyway, the inside is pretty much the same, and that's no bad thing really. You know, it's kind of hip and unconventional in here. We have Peugeot's now, I suppose, trademark tiny steering wheel here in front of me, and in front of the steering wheel you have the digital cockpit with some very crisp, clear animations and lots of customization. It's a very nice setup too. Moving to my left, we have the 10-inch infotainment screen, and it works pretty well. It's nice and clear, but at times it is a bit fiddly and just there's a lot of menus and there's a lot of working out. There is a learning curve to it. Also, the climate controls are housed within the infotainment screen, so you do have to touch all the different buttons just to control the climate control, which is a bit irritating. It is very typical in 2021 for most manufacturers to be doing that, but not a fan. Underneath the infotainment screen you do have a row of very interesting looking buttons with all the major functions to direct you directly to that function very quickly. One thing that has upset me, and if you have OCD it might upset you too, but all the buttons look the same, and then to the left you have a different looking button for the hybrid details and options, which might just upset you if you have a bit of OCD. Anyway, when you do click that button you get some details on your hybrid setup, so where the energy is flowing from the battery to the engine to the electric motor and how all that is going as you're driving along. You have some statistics like battery consumption, fuel consumption, all that kind of stuff. You have some various charging options, and there is one option to use the petrol engine to actually charge the battery, which I suppose is not ideal and would start to defeat the purpose and affect fuel economy, but it is a good option to have. Now, I would like to draw your attention to these seats because I think they are a work of art. They're just excellent looking. They're half leather, half Alcantara. They're just very pleasing, attractive and inviting to plonk your backside down on. Plus they are actually very comfortable and very supportive. I did a 180-kilometer journey in this the other day and absolutely no problems. Very comfortable I also like that the fabric on the seats follows through to the fabric on the dash here in this sort of flocked suede, and it feels lovely too, and it looks really cool too. Now there are 3 trim levels. That's not easy to say for me. Now there are 3 trim levels available on the 3008. 3 trim. The trim levels on the 3008 are as follows: Active, Allure and GT. The entry price for an active model is about €33,000. Today we are in a GT spec car, and that is just over €40,000. I think if you were buying a 3008, I would try and stretch to at least the Allure model. It's just a bit more visually appealing, it has nicer alloys, and it's not a huge amount of a price jump. I think it's only maybe €1,000 thereabouts, and it's worth it just for the visual appeal. In terms of practicality and where you dump all your stuff, it's okay. There's decent door bins, there's stuff for your cups and all that, and there is space for your phone and your wallet and your keys. That's all fine. And underneath here, you have a big space for all your other crap. See? Big, deep space. Lots of space in there. And that's no bad thing, because the glove box is absolutely minuscule and basically pointless. One gripe I do have is the way the dials are set up on the steering wheel. So intuitively you would think the dial on the right will control the digital cockpit, which I think is fair enough. The one on the left controls this one, because your left hand is near it and your right hand is near that one. It's actually the other way around, and it has confused me all week. I've been doing it the wrong way, and that is just, it's a simple fix. Like, why? Just messes with my head. So first impressions when driving the 3008. Well, there's no getting away from it. The steering wheel is the first thing that you have to get used to, and it's the first thing that hits you when you start driving. There are certain situations where I really love it, and they are specifically around town and parking and kind of slower maneuvers, because I think that's where it excels. It's got a real rapid response to it, and when you are parking and moving in and around town, it's very satisfying to use. Down a back road, I actually don't mind it either. It's quite enjoyable. But when you are on a motorway and maybe doing 120 kilometers an hour, it's just that the slightest input does translate to quite a bit more than you might be used to at the wheels. So you do have a tendency to be a bit fidgety with it almost. Now in the long term, I actually don't think it's something that is a massive deal. You kind of learn to live with it, and you kind of adjust your style to suit it. And it's something I did learn pretty quick, just to be a bit more gentle with the steering. I would advise testing one and giving it a go just to see, because I really don't think it will be everyone's cup of tea, and you do have a learning curve which you do need to be aware of. Now moving on to engines, there are 3 in the lineup. There's a 1.2 petrol, a 1.5 diesel, and then there's a hybrid. And there are 2 options on the hybrid. There's a 4-wheel drive option with 300 brake horsepower, and there's the hybrid we have today, which has 225 brake horsepower. Now the battery on board is 11.6 kilowatt hours, and according to Peugeot that should be good for 50 to 60 kilometers of electric range only. In truth, I'd say it's more closer to the 40s. Obviously this depends greatly on your style of driving. Motorway, that will deplete much quicker, and around town you might get into those higher figures. Charging, if you get a 7.4 kilowatt hour wall box, which is your typical wall box you get at home, it takes about 2 hours to charge from empty to full. That 225 horsepower means you will get to 100 kilometers in just 8.8 seconds. It does have that typical plug-in hybrid character of slightly delayed throttle response, and in particular if you ask it very quick, it just takes a while to work out what's going on. And I say this in every plug-in hybrid review. So you're tipping along and you quickly require some extra power, and it just takes a second to give it to you. When it does get up and moving, it is pretty rapid, and overtakes and all that kind of stuff shouldn't be an issue. We have an 8-speed automatic gearbox today, and that is excellent, and it does exactly what you want from an automatic gearbox. Works away in the background silently, smoothly, and is very impressive. So fuel economy, very important in your plug-in hybrids. There's always the option of just keeping it charged, doing short town journeys, and you'll never have to visit the Dino Juice shop. they'll be sorted on just electric alone. According to the trip computer here on this car, you're getting mid 5 litres per 100 kilometers, 5.6. So somewhere in around that region long term is pretty decent. Handling and dynamism are perfectly acceptable for a family crossover. It doesn't quite match some of its competitors for driving fun, and I feel like it does lean a bit more towards comfort. But I mean, this is a family crossover. Do you really care? Comfort is excellent too. It'll cover motorway miles very happily. We are on 18-inch alloys and only the most severe potholes will upset it. And because this is a hybrid, it is quite a bit heavier. So you do feel those potholes and bumps maybe a bit more than you would in a more standard model. Another typical plug-in hybrid trait that the 3008 has is that the brakes do take a bit of getting used to. So there's two things at play here. There's all the extra weight of those batteries, so you do have to be a bit more proactive with the braking than you might be used to on a more conventional car. All that weight just transfers to the front and you know about it in the brakes, you can feel it. And on top of that you have brake regeneration where the batteries are getting energy from you braking. And you do feel that in the brake pedal, it's just got a different sensation than you would normally be used to. So it does take a bit of adjustment, the whole braking on a hybrid. There's so much to enjoy and appreciate about the 3008, and to my eyes it is the best looking mid-size crossover out there at the minute, even after all these years, and that facelift has done it absolutely no harm whatsoever. If I was recommending one, I'd probably still go for the 1.2 petrol and in the lower spec. That's probably where your money is best spent. I know people are looking more into these hybrids and plug-in hybrids because I suppose we feel that's the way the world is going. I had someone ask me the other day would I recommend the Kia Sorento plug-in hybrid to her. And I asked her a few questions and it turned out it would have suited her if there was charging at her workplace, because it would have actually made sense then and she wouldn't have been using the petrol engine as much but still had that option. But because she had no charging at her workplace, it basically was a no-go for her. And I still think that's the issue. We just need better infrastructure to encourage people into cars like this and get people driving them a bit more electric if they want. If you'd like to search Cars Ireland for a 3008, please do click on the link above. Okay, thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoyed the review. Please do leave a like, a comment and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will see you again next week. Thanks a million for watching.
Sheep on the road. Do you see any sheep on the road?
No, didn't see any.
Have you seen any up there, time because I had them in for sheep.
How many?
Oh, there was 24 of them, but some got out on the road.
Jesus.
Have you seen any up the road?
I'll come back and tell you, no hassle.
They mightn't have, but just see the zip.
See, yeah, I will. I'll take it handy as well.
Just watch it, be up the road.
Yeah. Yeah.